YA books are for children or for those with unrefined taste in literature. Whew. I know there are some people who feel that way. I am not one of them. There are definitely people who are so judgmental and so pretentious they can't imagine why anyone would read something that they themselves don't read. But that's not what this video is about. This is about why I choose not to read young adult fiction most of the time. The main reason that I don't generally pick up a young adult book to read is because I'm not the target audience anymore. I do not consider myself to be a young adult anymore, and YA books mean young adult. They are written for an audience that is still young, whose life experiences are just not as broad yet. I don't want to sound like that older person who's like, those dang kids, but I am now 36 and I don't relate to the young adult content like I used to. I grew. And in some ways, I just outgrew some books that I would have enjoyed when I was younger. I will say this, I do still enjoy some young adult books, and here's why I think it can be easier for an older adult to still enjoy young adult fiction than maybe the opposite, and that's because I used to be a young adult. I remember what it was like. I can look back and reflect and remember, wow, in that situation, I used to feel that way. Whereas a younger person who hasn't been older yet, hasn't had those life experiences yet. And a really good example of this for me personally is the Live Ship Traders trilogy by Robin Hobb. I read this like 20 years ago. Do the math, I was in upper grades in high school probably. And the first time I read these, I really related to and understood the younger characters. There are some really well-written young female characters in these books. And now, 20-ish years later, in my mid to older 30s, I can still relate to those younger women, but also to the older ones as well now. And so if you took this story and stripped out those older women's perspectives and only had the younger ones, I might still enjoy it, but it wouldn't bring me the depth of joy and understanding and deep emotions as also those older women's perspectives in the story. I mean, just one thing, I did not have children the first time I read these, and now I do, among many other things. So I definitely still can enjoy some YA fiction, but it's not as deep or meaningful to me now. I think if I were to read The Hunger Games again, it would feel different than the first time I read them. I am reading through The Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini right now, and I can definitely feel that I'm not the target audience anymore, but seeing the story from the perspective I have on life now still makes it an interesting story to read. I did decide to put down a series that was geared towards young adults, and that's The Cytoverse by Brandon Sanderson. Skyward is the first one, and I almost put it down after a couple chapters because I thought, wow, this is not for me. She's a teenager. That's so far in my past now. But I kept going. I really enjoyed the book. I even made a video all about the defect and my ranting about how that relates to the real world. But I don't feel a deep draw to continue the series and finish it. There's just so many other books more in the adult fantasy realm that I'm more interested in and would rather spend my time on. I will say, if you clicked on this video because YA is not for you and you want to watch something where you can be like, yeah, stupid YA, please don't judge those older adults who are still living in that YA world. And I'll tell you why I feel that way. For one, there's no reason to judge someone else for what they like. People are allowed to like what they like because YA books can be shorter and easier to read, and life can be so stressful. If someone manages to squeeze in time to read in amongst all the stresses of life and they pick up a YA book, it's because that's what they need right now. That's what they need to read, to feel good, to relax, to sleep before getting up and going on the grind of life all over again. Some of my favorite books are actually young adult, maybe even middle grade. Anne of Green Gables, The Hobbit, couple of my favorites ever, because there's also that certain amount of nostalgia bringing me back to a younger time in my life when I didn't have all the stresses of life that come with just getting older and doing more things. So I am not here to come down hard on YA books. The reason I usually choose not to read them is a simple matter of relatability and not pretentiousness. I promise. Subscribe. See you in the next video.